I think it's going to be clear to everyone watching this that Tom and I are the musically challenged ones, given that you are both sitting there with guitars behind you. Booyaka, booyaka, jungle is massive. Welcome to the open source. Is that all right?
That was epic!
Tom and I are joined by Stephane Gonthier, International Head of Support at Acquia, and Simon Bannister from Focusrite. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here, virtually, of course.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Nice to see you both. As usual, James has absolutely smashed out the park with the most random introduction ever. So today we're going to get straight into it with our news article of the week. Lockdown part 2 is happening here in the UK right now, and in other parts of Europe as well. And so I was thinking about some of my fond memories of the first lockdown. And given that we're on a musical theme this week, this news article made me laugh a lot when it came out originally in August. This is a bunch of musicians who decided that even though their music video shoots were cancelled because of a lockdown, that they would have a go at filming them themselves. You can see there's some interesting Zoom effects going on here. Someone's just gone with a Zoom virtual background as the way forward. And some have even gone high-tech and gone fully animated. Firstly, guys, did you see any of these when they came out, or was it just me?
Yeah, sadly, I didn't see many of them, actually. No. But I can imagine there's some choice efforts in there.
Well, I'm also getting to the age where I don't know who these people are.
That was going to be my point. I will shamefully admit that I don't recognize any of them. So they would not have been on my radar.
Looking at that article about collaborating during lockdown, have you guys seen any differences in collaborating since this has all occurred?
Yeah, I'd say we've tried, actually, as my team, we did try and do an online jam together. I think it was Jamulus. I can't remember the other ones. We tried various degrees of success. That was quite interesting. We didn't quite get there. And thankfully, Zoom released an update that allowed it just to didn't mess around with the sound as you were playing or whatnot and having a decent interface. So, and one night I did manage to get connected to Jamulus and jam with just random Americans. It seemed lots of Americans on there. The sound quality is not great, but they are almost jamming in real time with somebody halfway around the world. You know, it's pretty impressive.
And there's no latency. Yeah. There's no like.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of latency. Yeah, that's part of the baggage, unfortunately. But it's good enough, and I think you'll take a hit on the sound quality, etc., because you're not in the same room as somebody. You're not, live on stage or whatever. So you just, as a musician, you just want to be doing it and playing with other people to have that connection. And I still, there's some Beatles songs, and the guy almost did the genre that would fit me. He was so good,
right? And
and then you part ways. It's really strange because it's like, oh, actually, I had quite a nice time with you. And it's like, anyway, I've got to go off to bed now, or whatever else. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Like an illicit affair that you're just having.
Well, exactly. Especially as this is separate from the house. My wife would never do that I was talking to a gruff Texan.
And what about you, Stephane?
No, it's interesting because I've seen some artists that I follow doing some collaborations, which I think we would not have seen otherwise. It's really great. In my it's the geeky stuff. I love seeing bands, that you wouldn't normally see play together doing a cover. So I've really enjoyed that part. Really, with the first wave of COVID, where suddenly I was like had time on my hands, and I used to play in a band, and I used to go with an organization called the Rock Project, which is a great group of guys just getting would-be musicians to try and then suddenly play in a band, and suddenly we all went virtual, and we started working on covers together. So it wasn't like you, Simon. It was all done. Each and every one of us will record our own track, and it worked. And it developed other aspects of a musician, which is to record and to all individually record without having the feedback from other musicians. So you have to kind of take a bit of a leap of faith, and then you start learning how that whole process works. So that was really interesting. Also gave me a chance to play with friends I played in bands many years ago. And I said, one of my best mates, Leo, he played in a band back in '99. And I said, I've been writing this song. Do you want to put something on it? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so we did something together, and it was great. It was really a great moment. It kept us going through this lockdown. So yeah, it's been an interesting experience, and using my beloved Focusrite solo, of course.
Yeah,
well, that's what we like. That's what we like to hear. It's a really interesting point about that feedback aspect. If you're in the pub and you've got people in front of you, there's a murmur. There's always somebody at open mic night just chatting away to their mate, and you go, why are you sat there? Just go and sit in the other part of the pub. But, when you finish, you get the feedback, you say thank you, muted round of applause if you haven't done very well, or much higher if you have. But doing that open mic night, virtually, everybody was on mute, and you're just like singing into the void, even though it was being streamed on Facebook. Yeah, you're singing into the void. So it's just, everybody has to adapt. Music is a very tangible, it's about feeling a lot of the time. So, if you go halfway through a song and then everybody's quite quiet, and then you do a really high note and people get energized by it, then the rest of your song you might be much more enthused with. And it really is about that feedback loop.
It sounds very similar to kind of what the sports business has been going through, right? Where there's been no fans for professional football, or, Tiger Woods saying it's just going to be weird without fans. That's obviously not only having an impact on how people perform, but also the business side of things. But Simon, from Focusrite's perspective, what's kind of been the story of 2020, or should I say the song of 2020?
The song of 2020, yeah. So we're a group of companies. So we've got Focusrite, which is recorded as a Focusrite consumer, for want of a better phrase. And then we've got, they go into the pro space of Focusrite Pro. We've got Amplify, which is apps. We've got something called Amplify Studio. We've got Adam Audio, so they are reference sounds, so studio monitors, etc., and for consumers as well. And we've also got Martin Audio, so which is like big stacks of speakers that might be in Glastonbury or Coachella, etc. So some parts of the group are doing very well, and some parts aren't doing quite so well, just purely because their focus is in markets that have been affected by this the situation. From the Focusrite perspective and Adam Audio's perspective, very consumer-led. There are lots of people are recording separately, as Stephane mentioned earlier. So what do they need? A decent audio interface. So obviously, we have seen an uptick in sales from that perspective. But the pro market and the live sound market across the world has been affected. And sadly, I had, this isn't to belittle delivery drivers at all, but yesterday, I opened the door to receive a parcel, and it was somebody I hadn't spoken to for, 15 years. And he was delivering because he's a pro musician. And another friend of mine is a pro musician who's working for Bezos now. Because obviously, that if you're making money from live, then yeah, it's a tough market.
It's definitely one of my friends is in a band as a professional musician, and they've really been scrambling, trying to find ways to generate revenue. And obviously all the revenue you get from gigs, you don't. So they're now doing a Patreon page and trying to get content there, recording sessions, and then talk about the process of writing songs and so on. So things that as a fan you would definitely want, but it doesn't make up for what you get when you go to a gig. And that for me, the headline of 2020, I had 10 gigs lined up I was going to go to, from Guns N' Roses to Pearl Jam to AEROSMITH, Jeff Beck. And yeah, all of them have been relabeled 2021. And, will it even happen? I even saw Ozzy Osbourne rescheduling for 2022. I'm like thinking,
there's a risk there. There's a risk there, perhaps.
I wonder if it would be like the movies where there is a ton of new music that just arrives in 2021, the stuff that people have hoarded. And
it's funny, when the open mic opened back up again, everybody almost had a lockdown song, and I'm friendly with the host. And it was like, my wife said to the host, I bet you can't wait for all these lockdown songs to come out, you know, all about desperation and isolation and all these things that aren't particularly uplifting, you know, and everybody seems to have one. And that's because they've got more time, and naturally everybody should be able to actually express themselves, but obviously at that time everybody was probably pretty low. So yeah, it'd be nice to see a competition for a happy lockdown song. Let's put it that way.
So looking ahead to the future and a bit more happiness, there's news on the horizon about early vaccines and stuff coming, which is maybe a little bit too early to get optimistic about, but it's coming. So let's assume that everything's awesome in another 6 months and we can all go out and hug each other again. What's the first band that you'd love to go and see?
Well, on Saturday, I was supposed to be seeing Pete Joseph, who is actually a friend of mine. And yeah, he just released an album, and there's a place called Assembly Rooms in Bristol and Stoke and in Old Market, and there was a gig on Saturday. If I had my way, that would be the one I'd go and see, because I was really looking forward to that. And instead, I'm going to be taking everything out of the loft, which is less exciting.
That sounds like a lockdown job right there, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
Stephane, what about you? You reeled off a whole list there. So
I think
regardless of when they've rescheduled for out of that list, right? Like if you could only go and see one band next year, who would it be?
That's a tough one. I think I'd have to choose between. I think thinking in terms of longevity, probably AEROSMITH, because they're all not young, and I always go and see them thinking, is it going to be the last time I see them as the original lineup? Sounds very morbid, but that's kind of perhaps what would drive it. The one band I got to discover during this whole lockdown thing, and through a Slack channel at work, is a band called God is an Astronaut, and it's just amazing music. It's very very trippy, very atmospheric. That's a band definitely I would love to see in 2021 if they tour. What about you guys? Are you into going to gigs or?
I do like gigs a little bit, but I also like electronic music, which might surprise a lot of people. So if there was sort of one performer, I would say that I could go and watch. I'd love to go and watch FATBOY Slim again. I do like a bit of a FATBOY Slim. James?
I was not expecting you to say that. I like all genres, really. Not a big fan of country, but I do like 07 I've been listening to quite a lot of during the lockdown. 07 and, the Air, the classics from the
Moon Safari.
Yeah. I love all that stuff. The other, I'd love to. I don't know. I don't think he's gigging. I don't know. I'm hoping he's still alive, actually. But I love Van Morrison. But I've had a bit of a bad experience because when I went to first see him live, he came on stage and he was absolutely inebriated. He was so drunk that he couldn't get his words out. And I was kind of pretty disappointed. And I just wanted to see him sober. So, a sober Van Morrison would be my answer.
I don't know if COVID has helped anyone be more sober.
Definitely not.
That's a beautiful segue to a question that I'd like to get us all to close with, and that's, what's the best gig you've ever been to?
Ooh.
I can kick off on this one. Prince at the O2 for me. I felt like he was superhuman. That he was playing different instruments. You forget how many hits he has. And even his catalogue of stuff that isn't commercial I was just blown away by him. It's definitely Prince for me.
Simon?
Stephane. I was going to pass the buck to the screen, actually.
Well, I'm going to be very unoriginal, but I think the first gig I went to was Guns N' Roses in '93. And I don't do drugs, but when they talk about the high you get, the first high you get for the first gig, I'm still chasing that high. I've got the ticket still on here on my wall. I kept it as a memento. It was probably a couple of years of built anticipation to see them live and to be old enough to go to a gig without my parents, obviously, as well. And just the moment the lights goes out and then you hear the bass going and you're like, the adrenaline pumping was just like nothing else.
I think there's something about the first gig, right? So my first gig was stereo PHONICS, which is not necessarily as good as those mega bands, but they were pretty awesome at the time, and I definitely remember that one. I think the best thing, just now that you guys know that I like electronic and dance music, Creamfields Festival 2006 and seeing the Prodigy live was pretty cool.
Simon, it's just you left, I think.
Just me left. So I've got to say that I can't believe we got 2 Guns N' Roses on responses. But now thinking back, it was amazing. I'd never been to Olympic Park before. It was a good day out with the boys, and it just brought so many memories back. And some of the photos that I've got from that, I cherish. I'm going to sneak in another one. I think there's when you go and see your mates play. They are not big, massive gigs or anything else like that, but watching your friends play is something really special as well, because you have that connection with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm just glad that none of us chose Chumbawamba. That was the main.
It's a classic. It's a classic. It's a modern classic. What can you say? It's not quite so modern anymore, probably.
Podcast ruined.
Well, then, I think that brings us to a close for this week. Thanks so much, Simon. Thanks, Stephane, for joining us, for entertaining these 2 non-musicians in James and I. And yeah, great to have you. Thank you.
Thanks for being on.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Booyaka, booyaka. Jungle's
massive.